Imagine a world where people stop asking questions. A society where beliefs are accepted without a second thought, where opinions are repeated like echoes, and where cultural, political, or spiritual idols decide what individuals should think, feel, and want. Sadly, this isn't some distant future. It's happening right now. The death of critical thinking isn't a warning on the horizon. It's already here, and the signs are everywhere. Every single day, pause for a moment. Ask yourself honestly, how often do you truly question the information you consume? How often do you stop yourself before clicking like, sharing, or repeating something you just heard? Many people believe they're free thinkers, but in reality, they're still trapped by the idols of modern culture. Sometimes those idols are celebrities. Sometimes they're political leaders. Other times, they're social media influencers or collective narratives that promise truth but quietly enforce conformity. This video is your invitation to wake up. We're going to uncover the dangers of ignorance and idolatry, and how both slowly destroy one of the most powerful abilities humans have, the ability to think critically. By the end, you'll see not only how independent thought is silenced, but also how to reignite it, how to reclaim your inner strength to resist manipulation, and stay free in a world that constantly tries to shape your mind. Stay with me until the very end, because the final revelation we'll reach is the most important one. It might change how you see truth, freedom, and even your own identity. Before we go deeper, take a second to support this movement. Subscribe to the channel. Leave a like. Share your reflections in the comments. This isn't just another video. This is a movement, a gathering of people who are willing to seek clarity in a world full of noise, who dare to question when everyone else chooses to follow. And I promise you, what you're about to hear will challenge the way you see things. Let's begin with ignorance. Throughout history, philosophers have warned us about its destructive power. Socrates once said that true wisdom begins when you realize how little you actually know. This kind of humility wasn't meant to make people passive. It was meant to inspire a relentless search for truth. But in the modern world, ignorance has changed its shape. It's no longer humble. It has become arrogant. It shows up when people reject complexity, ignore facts that threaten their worldview, and choose comforting illusions over inconvenient truths. Social media has made this even worse. With endless streams of content, people often feel informed, but in reality, they're stuck in echo chambers. Algorithms show us what we already agree with, not what challenges us. Instead of broadening our perspectives, this digital system locks us inside our own biases. And so, ignorance hides behind the mask of knowledge. Opinions are repeated as if they were facts. Pause and ask yourself, how many of your strongest beliefs are truly your own? And how many were quietly absorbed, never questioned, never examined? But ignorance alone doesn't explain why critical thinking is fading. Idolatry plays an equally powerful role. Idolatry isn't just about ancient statues or religious rituals. Today, it takes modern forms. We worship influencers, political leaders, ideologies, brands, and even symbols of success. Psychologist Erich Fromm warned that when people lose touch with their authentic selves, they create idols to fill the emptiness. These idols promise meaning, security, and belonging, but in return, they demand blind loyalty. Think about it. When was the last time you saw someone defend a public figure with almost religious devotion, ignoring clear evidence against them? When was the last time you noticed how certain lifestyles or brands are treated like sacred objects? This modern idolatry is quiet but dangerous. It thrives on conformity. And conformity is the enemy of critical thought. Nietzsche pointed out that people often prefer to worship false idols because it saves them from the hard work of thinking for themselves. To question is uncomfortable. To analyze is tiring. So many surrender their independence to trends, to leaders, to collective narratives, believing that by following, they are safe. But in truth, they become enslaved. Take a moment to reflect. Are there idols in your own life, ideas, traditions, or authorities that quietly shape your thinking? Are there beliefs you hold not because you reasoned through them, but because they were handed to you by culture or authority? Share your thoughts in the comments. This simple reflection might be the first step toward your liberation. The link between ignorance and idolatry becomes clearer the more you observe society. Ignorance creates the fertile ground in which idols take root. When people stop questioning, stop seeking, stop reasoning, they become vulnerable. Political, cultural, or spiritual idols then grow stronger, taking control. Over time, critical thinking dies, replaced by repetition, dogma, and blind devotion. But all is not lost. History shows us that every time critical thinking has been under threat, courageous individuals have risen to challenge the status quo. The Enlightenment, for example, was born out of such courage. Thinkers like Immanuel Kant urged people to dare to know, to stop depending blindly on external authority, and to think for themselves. That call echoes today, perhaps more urgently than ever. To understand why critical thinking is disappearing, we need to go deeper into the human mind itself. Ignorance and idolatry aren't just external pressures. They thrive because of certain psychological tendencies that exist in all of us. That's why do so many people prefer simple answers to complex questions? Why is following easier than thinking independently? The human brain is wired to seek certainty and avoid discomfort. Psychologist Daniel Kahneman, in his work on cognitive biases, explained that the mind uses mental shortcuts to save energy. But these shortcuts often distort reality. They make us cling to what's familiar, repeat what feels safe, and avoid the hard work of deep questioning. And then there's fear, perhaps the strongest force that silences independent thought. Throughout history, rulers and institutions have used fear to keep people obedient. Fear of punishment, fear of being excluded, fear of being wrong, fear of being different. These emotions push us toward conformity. When we're afraid, we crave security, and idols step in to offer that illusion. A strong leader, a comforting ideology, or a rigid tradition says, "Follow me, and you won't have to worry." And many give up their freedom of thought in exchange for the comfort of belonging. Reflect for a moment. How much of your decision-making is guided by reason, and how much is shaped by the fear of judgment or rejection? Write your reflections in the comments. Simply acknowledging these fears is the first step to breaking free. Carl Jung spoke of the collective shadow, the parts of humanity we refuse to face. When people suppress their doubts and insecurities, they often project their need for strength onto idols. That's why devotion to charismatic leaders, celebrities, or ideologies can become so intense. Unless we confront our inner shadows, we will keep worshiping them outside ourselves, giving away our power to those who pretend to have the answers. Modern society offers endless idols. Technology itself has become one. People trust algorithms more than their own minds. If a search engine ranks something first, many assume it must be true. If social media highlights a trend, people assume it must be valuable. But these systems aren't designed to reveal truth. They're designed to capture attention, generate profit, and shape behavior. Ask yourself honestly, how many of your opinions are shaped by what algorithms choose to show and by what they choose to hide? In this so-called age of information, ignorance hasn't vanished. It's been repackaged and distributed more efficiently, but we can't only blame external systems. The death of critical thinking starts from within. People often avoid critical thinking because it's uncomfortable. Questioning deeply held beliefs can shake the foundation of your identity. Philosopher Jean-Paul Sartre called this bad faith, the human tendency to deceive ourselves to avoid responsibility. Critical thinking forces us to face hard truths and own our choices. Idolatry, on the other hand, lets us push responsibility outward. I'm just following what I was taught. It's what everyone believes. It feels safe, but it steals your freedom. Pause here and reflect. Are there habits, traditions, or authorities you follow just because questioning them would be too painful? You're not alone. This is part of being human. But the difference lies in whether you choose to stay in that comfort or step beyond it. Philosopher Hannah Arendt, reflecting on the rise of totalitarianism, made a chilling observation. The greatest evil is not radical hatred, but thoughtlessness. Ordinary people, through their ignorance and idolatry, can become tools of destruction simply by refusing to think. That's why the death of critical thinking isn't just a personal loss, it's a collective danger. Without it, societies become easy to control, manipulate, and divide. So how do we resist? Step 1 is awareness. Realize that ignorance often wears the mask of certainty. Idols disguise themselves as saviors. Fear dresses itself as wisdom. When you see these disguises, you start to reclaim your freedom of thought. Step 2 is courage. The courage to face discomfort. The courage to stand apart from the crowd. The courage to hold uncertainty without running to easy answers. Albert Einstein once said, "Unthinking respect for authority is the greatest enemy of truth." Thinking critically doesn't mean rejecting all authority. It means examining it, weighing it, and never surrendering blindly. It's not the easy path, but it's the path to a life that is authentic, meaningful, and free. Before we continue, I want you to reflect. Which area of your life requires deeper questioning? Where have you chosen comfort over truth? Comment your answer below. Your reflection might inspire someone else to break free too. In the next part, we'll uncover how modern systems, politics, media, culture weaponize ignorance and idolatry to shape entire populations. We'll expose how this manipulation quietly erodes freedom on both individual and collective levels. Stay with me, because what's coming will reveal forces that most people never even notice, but which shape their daily lives. Imagine a world where people stop asking questions. Picture a society where beliefs are accepted without a second thought, where opinions are repeated like echoes, and where cultural icons, political figures, or even spiritual leaders decide what people should think, feel, and want. Unfortunately, this isn't some distant nightmare. It's the reality we live in now. The slow death of critical thinking isn't a future threat. It's happening right now, and its signs are all around us. Think for a moment. How often do you really question the information you consume? How often do you pause before liking, sharing, or repeating something you've heard? Many believe they are independent thinkers, but in truth, they are often tied to the idols of modern life. These idols can be celebrities, political leaders, influencers, or even collective stories that claim to give us truth but actually demand conformity. This message is an invitation, a wake-up call. We're going to explore the dangers of ignorance and idolatry, and how these forces slowly destroy one of the greatest human abilities, the power to think critically. By the end, you'll understand how independent thought is silenced, and more importantly, how to revive your inner strength to resist it. And stay with me until the very end, because the final revelation is the most powerful part. It has the potential to change how you see truth, freedom, and even your identity. Before we dive deeper, support this journey. Subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and share your thoughts in the comments. This is more than just another video. It's a movement of people seeking clarity in a noisy world. People who dare to question while others simply follow. And I promise, what you're about to hear will challenge the way you see everything. We often believe we're informed because we read, headlines, or watch quick news clips. But the truth is, most of the time we're just taking in carefully chosen fragments that fit someone else's agenda. The German philosopher Jürgen Habermas once said that a healthy democracy depends on a public space where rational debate thrives. But what do we usually see? Not real debate, but spectacle. And spectacle doesn't feed critical thinking. It starves it. Now let's look at the world of technology and social media. Humanity has never had this much information before. But at the same time, misinformation has never been this powerful. Algorithms don't care about truth. They care about what keeps you scrolling. They push content that triggers your emotions, not your mind. Controversial, emotional, or extreme content rises to the top. Balanced, rational, and thoughtful perspectives sink into the background. And this creates a culture of modern idols, influencers with perfect lives, viral movements that demand loyalty, and online tribes that offer belonging in exchange for obedience. Ask yourself, honestly, how many people today build their worldview not through careful thought, but through whatever is trending on their feed? What happens to a society when critical thought is replaced with endless stimulation? The answer is dangerous. When people stop analyzing, they simply react. And when people react, they become predictable. Predictability is the basis of control. Corporations predict what you'll buy. Politicians predict what you'll support. Social movements predict what will make you outraged. And because these predictions work, the cycle repeats itself. Ignorance grows deeper. Idolatry spreads further. Independent thinking fades away. History gives us endless warnings. In the 20th century, many authoritarian regimes didn't just rise through violence. They rose through manipulation. Leaders built idols of themselves. They projected strength and vision while crushing independent voices. Millions followed blindly, not because they were bad people, but because they failed to think critically. The philosopher Hannah Arendt warned us, the greatest danger is thoughtlessness. And even today, in our enlightened world, we see the same patterns return. Look at the rise of conspiracy theories. At first, they seem to challenge mainstream narratives. But often, they just replace one idol with another. Instead of deep questioning, people hand their trust to new authorities who promise secret knowledge. Ignorance doesn't disappear. It just wears a different mask. At the core of all of this is a refusal to carry the responsibility of thinking for oneself. But don't lose hope, recognizing this problem is the first step toward freedom. The moment you see how ignorance and idolatry are used to control you, the illusion starts to break. Critical thinking might be under attack, but it's not dead. You can bring it back within yourself. Every time you resist the urge to share something without checking, every time you pause and ask, is this true? Who benefits if I believe this? You're taking your power back, but resistance isn't easy. Thinking critically in a culture that worships conformity often means standing alone. It can mean facing judgment, exclusion, or even hostility. Yet, history celebrates those who had the courage to question when others obeyed. Socrates questioned and paid with his life. Galileo questioned and faced persecution. Countless reformers, scientists, and philosophers suffered because they refused to follow blindly. Their courage gave birth to progress. Their stories remind us that the same courage is needed today. So let me ask you directly, are you willing to question the idols of our time, even if it costs you comfort? Are you willing to challenge illusions, even if it sets you apart? Share your thoughts in the comments, because your decision to question is the seed from which real freedom grows. Now, let's move to the final and most important part: how to protect and grow critical thinking in your daily life. We've walked through the shadows of ignorance and idolatry. We've seen how they silence minds and shape society. But now, it's time to talk about liberation. If ignorance and idolatry are the chains, critical thinking is the key. And the big question is, how do we bring back this dying art of deep, free, and brave thinking, both personally and as a society? The first step is awareness. But awareness alone isn't enough. It must lead to action. Socrates famously said, "The unexamined life is not worth living." To truly live, we must constantly question our own beliefs, desires, and assumptions. Self-examination is not weakness, it's strength. It frees us from the invisible patterns that ignorance maintains. Each time you ask yourself, "Why do I believe this?" you sharpen your mind. The second step is the discipline to seek truth, even when it's uncomfortable. The philosopher Immanuel Kant said, "Dare to know." Have the courage to use your own understanding. Truth often challenges what we hold dear. Critical thinking doesn't mean rejecting everything. It means demanding evidence, logic, and clarity before you accept something. It also requires intellectual humility, the understanding that no one has all the truth, but through honest questioning, we can move closer to it. The third step is dialogue. Critical thinking doesn't grow in isolation. It flourishes in conversation. Listening to different perspectives pushes us to move beyond our biases. John Stuart Mill argued that if you only know your side of an argument, you actually know little about it. True freedom of thought requires that we expose ourselves to opposing views, not to weaken our beliefs, but to test and refine them. In a world full of echo chambers, choosing dialogue is an act of rebellion. The fourth step is courage. Without courage, awareness, discipline, and dialogue remain powerless. Courage is what turns thought into action. It's what allows us to resist idols and stand firm when the world pressures us to kneel. Courage is what allows us to remain independent thinkers in a society that punishes dissent. Remember, every major step forward in history happened because someone dared to question. And here lies the most powerful revelation of all. Critical thinking is not just a mental skill. It's an act of freedom. And freedom is at the core of human dignity. When you think for yourself, you take back control of your life. You're no longer defined by social idols, media manipulation, or tradition. You become, in the truest sense, fully human. This is why ignorance and idolatry are so dangerous. They don't just fog your mind, they steal your humanity. To give up your ability to question is to give up your very self. But to awaken, to think, to challenge, is to come alive. This path isn't easy, but it's the path of truth, meaning, and freedom. Take a moment to reflect. What areas of your life have been shaped more by idols than by reason? What beliefs have you carried without questioning? What fears have silenced your critical voice? And most importantly, what's one step you can take today to reclaim that voice? Write it in the comments. Your decision to awaken might inspire someone else to begin their journey too. The philosopher René Descartes, often called the father of modern philosophy, began his search for truth by doubting everything. He stripped away illusions until he found the one undeniable truth. I think, therefore I am. This isn't just a clever phrase. It's a declaration of freedom. To think is to fully exist. To question is to live authentically. To surrender thought is, in a way, to die while still breathing. In a world drowning in noise, you have a choice, to follow blindly or to awaken. If you choose to awaken, you might not always find comfort, but you will find truth. And truth, though demanding, is the foundation of a life worth living. Remember this. Ignorance is not innocence. Idolatry is not devotion. Both are prisons. And only through the fire of critical thought can you break free. Let this not be just another message you hear and forget. Let it be a turning point. A moment where you decide that your mind, your freedom, and your humanity are too valuable to give away. Let this be the spark that begins your journey of awakening. Because the death of critical thinking is not inevitable. It ends the moment you, and enough of us, decide to think again. If this message speaks to you, if you believe the world needs more awake and alive minds, then join this community. Subscribe, share this video, and invite others to awaken with you. Together, we can resist ignorance, dismantle idols, and restore our greatest power. The ability to think. To think is to resist. To think is to live. To think is to be free. Thank you for watching.